Quitting is so underrated. Am I right? You probably think I'm not.
Hello and welcome to Alt With Lella. I am your lovely host, Layla, a poet, an Afro-Feminist, life coach, and an artist. Really, what I am is a magician. And Alt With Lella is a lifestyle podcast that offers you alternative ways of feeling, thinking, and living outside of societal conditioning from an Afro-Feminist perspective. Alt With Lella mainly serves as a prompt to the listener to rethink and reflect on what we accept as norm, culture, and heritage. Make sure to click the subscribe button to get notified about new episodes. You can also find Alt With Lella on Instagram and TikTok as Alt With Lella. And if you're interested, you can find my personal accounts at A Lifetime With Layla on both of these platforms. While you're at it, you can check out my website at lifetimewithlayla.com to access the services I provide. Thank you and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Alt With Layla's 4th episode ever. Oh my gosh, it's literally a month now and I'm so excited. I am super happy to have you here and thank you so much for tuning in. As you can tell by the title, it's called I Quit and I Won. Yeah. Like I said in the last episode, I kind of want to give you a background of myself, of Layla, what shaped me as a young girl, and why I am the way I am today. So let's get into the 4th episode. Today I want to talk about how quitting school was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, even though it was one of the most ego-shattering and identity crisis-inducing experience of my life. So when I was in high school, I was super excited and ready to go up. So in Ethiopia, what you do is So in Ethiopia, what you do is you do the college or university entrance exams, and then you get your results, and then when you are applying for university before the exam, you choose locations like universities across Ethiopia you want to go to. Like you have 5 top options you can choose from, and then you can choose what you want to study, which is also 5 things you want to study, and that you get according to how good your scores are, right? So then I wanted to study software engineering, but at the time there was no software engineering, so there was only electrical engineering, which I'm obsessed about, by the way. I should have just really stuck with that, but that is not the story for today. So I applied for electrical engineering because during the third year or the second year, after doing the electrical engineering course, you can choose software engineering. And I was like, sign me up. So I applied for those. I don't even remember my second options, to be honest, because who needs second options when you've always gotten your first? Yeah. Anyway, a long story short, I passed the examination and then I get all the things that I want, which is Addis Ababa University, I think Amiskilo, yeah, and electrical engineering. And I was super excited because I've been seeing my sister go to university in Sidiskilo because she's was a law student. Anyway, so I was so pumped. And I remember that time in high school, I didn't want to take the SATs or the TOEFL because also it has a lot to do with privilege. Back then it was I don't know, a lot of thousands of birds. And that's privilege, actually. And then there's application fees and all that. So I really I didn't want to have more expenses, So I was just you know what? This is my path. I'm super pumped, super excited, right? And I don't apply. So I'm seeing all my friends, kind of getting ready to go, got accepted to the colleges and universities they want to go to, yada, yada, yada. And so I'm getting excited. And a month before, my mom is before is when I actually had to go abroad to study. So a month before, so one night, right, I'm minding my business at home and mom's like, hey, do you want to go to study in China? And I'm just like, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I do. Mainly because I was really excited to explore and wander and, go out of Ethiopia and travel and stuff. So I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. And then She was working with the alumni of a university in China. And so he helped me apply. And yeah, and then I got in. And then literally I knew a month before that I got in and that I could go. This is a scholarship that I'm talking about. Yeah. So I was super excited. And then I remember like some of our friends were like, oh, you're leaving? A little bit salty. I don't know if they were friends that were salty, but like more acquaintances or classmates that were a little salty because I'm like, how come you didn't tell us? Like I kind of kept quiet about it and all. And I'm like, I am as shocked as you are. Yeah. And so I packed my stuff like a month. I'm super excited, super pumped. And I'm also studying software engineering, right? And so the arrangement was I do, because it's a scholarship, you have to do a year of Chinese and then start your major. And I'm like, you know what? It's software engineering, and it was in Chinese, mind you. Like the bravery, the gall, the gumption, right? So I was like, you know what? I can do this. I can do everything, right? That I set my mind to. And I'm like, so I sign up. I go. So first thing I want to do on the land at the airport is I'm trying to get to call my mom on a payphone. I asked this gentleman, police officer, no English, no habla inglés, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, oh, cool. If like in the capital city, international airport, person doesn't speak English, then you're pretty done. Yeah. So then I find a payphone, sort my stuff out, call my mom, tell her I'm there, and then people come to pick me up, blah, blah, blah. And it all just happens magically and wonderfully. I'm thrilled, I'm excited, I'm loving it, right? And then I go to my school. So school had started in September, but I got there October 19. Yeah, so because I was late. So the university I went to didn't have a lot of foreign students. It had enough, but not a lot. So they had already paired up. So I managed to get a dorm room by myself. And then I got a room, like a dorm room by myself. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. And I was obsessed. And so we started going to Chinese classes. And so we start going to Chinese classes. I meet my soul sister, literally a girl from my soul family, which is Juliet. And so we hit it off. She's from Nigeria. I remember I had her passport from the office, and then they're like, give this to her. And I knock on her dorm room. That was the first time, and she opened the door and she's like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. That was the first thing she said to me. Actually, I kind of want to cry right now because I miss her so much. Anyway, so we go to Chinese class together. We go to Chinese class together. We are experiencing and living our best lives, or college life in China, or whatever you call it. Like, we're so thrilled. So me and Julie are kind of living and exploring and shopping and eating so much, like just thoroughly enjoying ourselves, right? And so the first year passes, and then I remember in Chinese class, like, so I think I'm what you call hyper independent. So at some point I got really good in Chinese because I was so sick and tired of asking people for favors. Because when you ask someone a favor, right, and then they do the favor for you, you can only say thank you. You can't be like, actually wanted it this way or wanted it that way. You just be like, thank you very much for your time and effort, and then you move it along. So because I wanted things done my way, I was really dedicated to my Chinese studies. And I remember, like, I didn't speak for a whole year for the first year because I was very shy. Not shy, I was afraid of making spoken mistakes. So by the time throughout the year, I was already texting, chatting, and reading. So that was really great and wonderful. And I remember even the first day I cracked a joke in Chinese. I was like, that's core memory. Like, you understand the language, but you don't really understand it completely until you understand the jokes. I think that's some next level fluency. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with me on this too. So yeah, and then the second year comes, right? This is me starting my major. And so that was a doozy. That was a real doozy because I went in the classroom and it is like, I'm like the literal only Black girl and Black person in the classroom, which is fine. That's really not my issue. But it was in Chinese. And I was like, ting budong, you know what I mean? Ting budong, because ting budong means like, I don't understand. In Chinese, like, I understand. I like my listen, like, ting budong really translates to listen, no, understand, basically. So it was really, really difficult. And I'm like, holy shit, what did I sign up for? And that second year proceeded to be one of the most difficult years in my life, where I struggled a lot to keep on keeping on, to understand, to learn, but it was so difficult. And at some point, I was like, fuck this shit. I can't be here. I don't want to be here anymore. So then I start trying to find a way out, right? So I talk to my scholarship because I am on a scholarship, right? And then they say, well, if you're done here, then you're done here. So I try to find so luckily for me, because God is good, baby. I find another scholarship. I find another school. And then I find a school that also teaches software engineering in English for foreign students. But the catch was, it was the first batch ever of English software engineering course, right? So I'm like, sign me up. So that school, that was the first time, not first, yeah, kind of, where I experienced like straight up blatant racism in a school context. Because I went to because a lot of the times in China, the students, or like the schools, the schools think that you're just there for the visa, right? But so I went there and he's like, no, you just want the visa. I know that your visa expires today. And I'm like, no, I actually have a year student's visa because from my previous school, right? And I tell him I just want to exchange because this is where what I want to learn is here. And so this school that I went to, I also, two of my friends also were old students from there, right? So I talked to one of my African friend, who's from Africa. And then because he used to be an old student there for him to talk to me, for him to go talk to them for me, basically. And so this guy, not a great cheerleader of mine, I later find out, but that's neither here nor there. So I ask him, he goes talk to them, and then he comes back to me and tells me, yeah, they said like, you're like one of the, best black students we have, and we don't know like what type of student she'll be, blah, 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 blah. And he comes back with this stupid ass answer that we can't guarantee that she's a good student, which is messed up, basically. And it's strictly because I was black, strictly. And so now I have definitive evidence that they're being racist towards me. And so then I reach out to my other friend who's a white person, who goes to that school currently as well, then at least. And so I tell him, hey, so this is happening. He's like, what? They said that? Blah, blah, blah. And he loses his shit. Now that's a friend. Yeah. Take notes. And so he goes to the school, right? And he tells them, what the hell? Like, what are you telling her? Why are you being racist? And then they lie to him and tell him, no, she has like a day visa. Like a month's visa, that's why. And he's like, Layla, like, what the hell? You only have a month's visa? And I'm like, no, I have a year. And then he goes back, right? And then he's like, that's a lie. And then long story short, they contact me, I go, I apply, I get in. That's how you are actively anti-racist. Take notes, my friends. Take notes. How to be actively anti-racist. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that was a big slay. And he's still my friend today, and he's a fucking star. Yeah. Gosh, I sure do love surrounding myself with people that can't stand injustice. Actually, that's like currently my biggest flex, to be surrounded by those people only. So yeah, and then I go into the school, and then it's like, before my old school was like away, right? But now it's in the city. So I'm like, oh, city girl, I've always been working too. So then I am slaying, I am going to school, I'm kind of loving it, kind of hating it, kind of loving it, kind of hating it, because it's a new life, right? So I had my own apartment, I was working, I had school, like I was, dare I say, or actually I was quote unquote on the right track, right? And so I remember throwing a house party, and like still have photos. Like I was really, really happy with the choices that I made, like to get myself out of that situation and to this new situation, to give myself a proper chance at education. So then school starts, and I am having a hard time. Like, the school is fine, but like I was the only girl in the classmate, and then there was a bunch of other guys, foreign guys, only guys. And tell me why, tell me why, tell me why. Their first question to me was like, are you a virgin? I'm like, you know what? And the thing is, at the time, already 2 years had elapsed. So I was like 20 and then they were like 18, right? So I was like, no, I reject this. I reject this. And then, but then we managed to get along, which was fine, whatever. But then the school, right? The education was not it. Like, oh my gosh, it was so painful. It was so painful. Because I was having such a bad time because the language barrier was real. Like, these teachers are amazing teachers, okay? They're amazing teachers. It's a really good school. Amazing teachers. But when you try to teach in a whole new language, shit gets lost in translation, and shit was lost in translation. I remember like struggling to ask a question. Like, I'd stand, raise my hand, ask a question, and then be like, huh? And then I'd like break it down further, and then it'd be like, huh? And then I'd break it down further to the point where there was no more question. And that was like the consistent pattern. And so I was like, you know what? I'm having a bad time. And so what do I do? I turn into like being a complete and utter party animal. But because I had to cope, I had to cope. I don't know how else to tell you. Like, so there was a point in that time where like I understood, like I literally like kind of sunk, because like previously, like you drink, right, at a party, whatever, and you drink to get drunk and get lit and party. But now I was at a point where I was like, oh my gosh, this is how people become alcoholics, because I was drinking to literally escape my reality, like officially, like I knew it, and I was like, holy shit, either I have to do something or something needs to change, otherwise this is not sustainable. So I keep on. It's been a year, and then I'm on a second year, just continuing, right? And so I'm thinking maybe I can take a semester break and whatnot, and that and this, like just really thinking about options, like how do I move from the situation? And it was the most difficult time, because it was extremely heartbreaking. First of all, because I wanted to learn software engineering. Because computers are the only thing that don't misunderstand me. I write this, or you write a code, and it's like, yeah, I understand you. And if there's any miscommunication, it's on my side. There's no bias, and it was one of the greatest things, because I can get along with a computer. I can be clear. Anyway, I digress, but I really loved it, and I really wanted to learn, and I felt like my passion kind of slipped through my fingers, to be honest. And then I was working more, and then I was working more, and I was working a lot more, partying a lot more, and like the school was getting more, like I was ditching class, and like the pressure was pressurizing. Like, I was in a pickle. And I remember my sister was there at that time, because my sister came to visit me, and then went back, and then moved for like a year or two. And that was the time. And then we were living together. Yeah. And then I suggested that, because I was struggling a lot, mentally, physically, emotionally, like you name it, a hot mess. So I remember being in desperate need. Like, I think it was the peak of like suicidal ideation for me. Peak. Like, I remember lying in bed, right? This is like almost beginning of the third year, right? At a 4-year program, mind you. So I'm suffering. I'm like to the point where I'm in bed at night sobbing and crying my eyes out. Like, how can I be such a fucking failure? Like, why am I doing this? Like, why don't I just suck it up and like pretend I'm understanding and like just move on, and just like why do I want to like change my situation? Like, because I was like forcing myself to stay, because I was on the quote unquote right path, right? And one of the things that hit me that time, I'll get back to what I said about like what the relevance of my sister being there is in a minute. But what I did want to say was like in China, filial piety is like everything. Everything. Like I would have girlfriends, right? Like friends who are girls. And then they moved out of their hometowns, living their lives in the city, blah blah blah. We're just, doing our thing. And then one of the things that they were pressured about by their family is to have a husband, right? And I'm like, but you're so like liberated. Like, why are you succumbing to this kind of pressure? Like, no, don't do it. Like, you can, resist and do what you want. And then these girls would be like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna do that. But then they would go home on like spring holiday or spring vacation, which is the Chinese New Year, spring festival. They would go home to their families and then come back with like, they would, because they would experience a lot of pressure from like literally everyone in their family, because everyone comes together, families come together during the Chinese New Year. And so they would come back and have a whole different outlook and like be with horrible boyfriends or try to stay in really toxic relationships just so that they can get married and do the damn thing, And you know what? I was like, the whole time, I was like, why can't you fight back? Why can't you resist? And the whole time, I was the one in the same type of societal pressure and societal pressure and like filial piety, because the hardest part for me was I was a software engineer since third grade. Yeah. Like in third grade, I wanted to be a vet because that's the first time I knew that doctors existed for animals, and I was obsessed. And still am obsessed with animals. So I'm like, there's a doctor for animals? Sign me up. I'm a veterinarian from now on. And then that was over, and then I got my computer in third grade, and I was like, computer programmer, thank you. And I never changed. And then so I was already a software engineering. So that identity that I had to like drop was like ego shattering, A. Maybe that was B. A, it was like my mom raised me to be this independent woman who goes to school, does her damn thing, slays all day, every day, And I'm supposed to be going abroad, studying, making something of myself instead of like scuttering or away in fear and like not learning the thing that I'm supposed to learn, And it created such an identity crisis for me, to the point that, again, it was like the height of my suicidal ideation. And I remember lying in bed, like looking, like opening and closing my fists and moving like looking at my fingers move, telling myself, okay, focus on your moving fingers, Layla. Focus, because my mind was racing, because my mind would not quit. Like it would just be torture up in there, right? And so I would move my fingers, just kind of lock into the present moment, It was so bad. And then, like I said, my sister was there, and I was like, because I love books that change my life. And this is another book, actually. We decided to do a book club. Well, read a book together, basically. Was A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. So what we decided to do was read one chapter and then discuss, and then read another chapter and then discuss. That experience was life-changing, like extremely and utterly life-changing. It gave me the strength to stand on business, which is my life. And at some point, I remember at some point, I'm getting emotional because this is, I don't know, it feels like it's like if I were to give it like a I don't know, metaphor, I don't know, whatever, but it felt like be a corpse escaping their burial ground. But you're not a corpse. You're alive and you're buried. And so, you know how hard and terrifying it is to be in a coffin? Like, I've seen way too many horror movies that resonate, that have expressed that feeling. Anyway, cracking the coffin open, going out through the mud and breathing, finally being able to breathe. That's how it was. And so one of the things that I decided after reading that book was like, I was like, okay, these are my options, right? These are my options. I can A, these were my, okay. Whew. I was like, these are my options. A, I pretend that I'm happy and I pretend that I will finish the school and I will continue with the school, get my stupid ass stupid paper degree. I call it stupid because not that it's stupid, but because I didn't feel like I am a software, or I would feel like a software engineer, or that I would have learned the things I needed to learn for me to feel good about getting that degree, you know? And I was like, yes, I'll do that. I'll be dead inside, and then I'll just do what's right? Quote unquote, do what's right, and then eventually die. Because if I chose that path, which is not my path, but what others chose for me, I said, I'll do it. If I do it because of my insides is dead, I will die. Even if I don't end it myself, I would embody the frequency of death, and death would come for me. Like, I was so sure. And so then the second option is I choose me, and I get rid of everyone in my mind. Because one of the greatest revelations that happened for me is when I had to ask myself, why do I want to end it? Or why do I want to like not live anymore? I asked myself, okay, if no one in the world existed, if it was just you, would you still want to live? And the answer was yes. And then I realized, okay, so it's not that I hate life. It's not that I don't want to be alive. It's not that I don't want to live. It's that I'm not allowed to live in the way that I see fit, you know? And then I was like, okay, maybe I'm not suicidal. I'm homicidal, you know? Because like, what's really driving me to that point is other people. So you know what I did? The option 2 that I referred to was choose me and off everyone in my head. Like just off everyone in my head. And so that it was the most baller move I ever made for myself. And I immediately, literally, I was like, you know what? Fuck all of you. You was dead to me. Because why are you trying to make me kill myself? You know, not to like hold other people accountable for my suicidal ideations, but that is what societal pressure does, whether you like it or whether you don't. That's what it does. It drives you to your wit's end. And I got there and I'm like, I backed it up because I offed all of yous in my head. Yeah. And then that was like the stepping stone for my spiritual awakening that happened not long after that. So then, right, I was like, I know what I am now. Like, it's important because even like the other day I was invited to my old high school, Nazareth school, to do a workshop on self-acceptance. And the thing is, one of the first things you have to do before you accept yourself is know who you are. Know who is the self that you are. And that's one of the things that totally changed everything for me. To know what I am and who I am and what I'm feeling and what I'm not feeling. So me realizing that I actually do want to live. I want to live. I'm alive. I love life. I want to live. That reality was like that distinction. I was like, oh, no. I want to live. It's others killing my vibe. So once I gave that distinction, I literally dropped all I use. Like, it's hot in my mind. And I remember one of the one of the biggest, hardest decisions I've ever had to do was that in my entire life to this day. I might be a little pathetic, but so be it. So then I was like, even telling my mom, like even thinking about, like before thinking about telling my mom or like the reality of my life, whoo, good God. So basically after that distinction that I made, I was like, yeah, I'm done here. I didn't even ask anymore. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I explained why and what I'm gonna do instead, blah, blah, blah. And it was done and dusted, baby. It was done and it was dusted. Yeah. And so after that, like after making that decision, and then I went to school and I told them I'm gonna take a semester break just in case if I want to come back. You know what I mean? And then you know what? Everybody was like, literally, everybody and their moms was like, but you've done 3 years. You've done 3 years of a 4-year program. What's one more year? You've suffered already 3 years. What's another year? And I was like, wow, people will really expect you to suffer a little longer because you've suffered a lot longer. Like, please, like, let's sit down and make this make sense. Their justification is, you've already suffered 3 years, therefore, what's another year? Like, there is no large amount of suffering that justifies a little bit more. Like, please make that clear to yourself. Like, ain't no way that suffering just a little more, or like being able to suffer a little more, is because, you've already suffered a lot. What's a little more? No, it's because I suffered a lot, it means I can't take any more. That's exactly what it means. Like, I am at my threshold. I'm at my limit. Like, that's how people justify things. That's how people justify their horrible lives. I'm so sorry to say. But, like, no, I'm sorry, pass on that. And so, imagine, like, after all that mental gymnastics that I did to come to that decision, they're now sitting me down and telling me, but the 3 years of suffering, like, as if like, make that useful, make that make sense, like, make that not in vain. Nothing was ever in vain, ever. First of all, me getting to that point in my life, to that realization, and I needed to go through all of that. I needed to go through all those hoops and trials and tribulations to get to the point where I know what I want and I know who I am, and so nothing will ever be in vain. You know what I mean? So then I take that semester break, and now I am free and I'm loving it. And so from that point on, I started a business there in China, and that, like, I did my vegan startup. I'll talk more about this, but because like my childhood dream was to own a restaurant, and it will still happen, by the way. Mark my words, I will have a restaurant. That was my dream. So I was like, let me do a startup. And then I did a startup, and I met, like, when I tell you, my life transformed into this, like, it was so magical. I could not believe it. I don't know what else to say. Like, it was so powerful, and it was life-changing. And I know the friends that I made in that time, doing what I wanted, pursuing what I want. Mind you, I continued learning Chinese, and because I love Chinese. I love Chinese culture. I love Chinese people. Can the record show? Thank you. So what happened after that was extremely life-changing. Like, I am not the same person because I realized I matter. So yeah, like, that's literally one of, and then when you choose a path, right, that is not your own. I mean, when you walk the path that's been walked a million times over, there's not a lot of stress. Yes, it was magical, but it was, to this day, choosing myself every day and doing this thing, or choosing my own path, walking my own path, to this day is extremely challenging. Like, really difficult, because no one has ever walked it. Not to say that, but I forged my path. I forged my own path. That's what I mean. And it's really hard because you have to forge it. You have to, because you're the one paving the way, literally. And it's not easy, and it's so hard, much more harder, but I am alive. And that is the only thing I ever need to get anything done in this world, to be alive. You know what I mean? And as per usual, because it's a thing now, I'm gonna share a poem with you. Yeah. Again, no title. I'm gonna be realer. I thought I was real. I discovered a new layer. I needs no more authentication than the am that follows. The tattoo on my arm, a light I can follow. For me to know the truth, I have to put all of you aside. All of your thoughts, all of your actions, all of your feelings and emotions. Those aren't about me, and they never will be. It's about you, and was never due to me. It was about your upbringing, your heartbreaks, your fear of loneliness, your abandonment issues, and all the times you cried and no one gave you tissues. About all the love you don't know how to give, and all the love that you got but couldn't receive. I am nothing but a trigger to the gun you've been holding all along. So if you die, your aim is off. And scene. And because Alt With Lella serves as a prompt to the listener, I invite you to unpack in what ways do you put others first in your own life? And not in a kind way, but in a more self-abandoning way. In what ways do you say yes when it means saying no to yourself and what you want to do with your life? And I also invite you, in what ways do you also stop others from doing their own thing? In what ways do you enhance or join societal pressuring of other people? In what ways do you exercise that? And in what ways do you think that you succumb to societal pressure? I invite you to unpack that whenever you see fit. And I wish you the strength, the willpower, the audacity, the gumption to choose yourself every day for the rest of your life. All right, I think that's enough yapping for the 4th episode of Alt With Lella. I quit and I won.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. You can also find Alt With Lella on Instagram and TikTok as Alt With Lella. And if you're interested, you can find my personal account at A Lifetime With Lella on both of these platforms. While you're at it, you can check out my website, altwithlella.com, to access the services I provide. Thank you for listening, and goodbye until next time.